Hello and welcome back to Property Insights. We've got a very exciting episode today. We've got Steve Mitchell with us. He's a landlord and letting agent based in and around the Cambridge area, and we're going to be chatting about what he's up to in property now and his background and everything. So welcome back. My name is Mark Ashworth.
I'm Neil Harding. Steve, welcome to Property Insight.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Fully excited.
We've known each other for a few years now. We know that you're very active as a property investor, landlord and letting agent. For people that don't know you so well, tell us about yourself and what you do in property.
So my name's Steve Mitchell. I've been involved in property since 2013. Previous to that, I had a corporate role in finance, and previous to that I worked in logistics. Go back to sort of 2008, 2009 financial crash. Being in finance, obviously it was a kind of an interesting time, and certainly the company that I worked with went through a lot of change. So it started to sow the seed what would happen after working in the finance industry. So Monica, my wife, and I had always been interested in property. Every time we went on holiday, we'd always be looking at the local property markets, looking at what's for sale. We've always done well in buying our own home. So the first flat that we bought was for £37,000. We sold that for 125, and then we bought a 4-bed townhouse. We bought that for 137, sold that for 260. So we'd always done reasonably well but it was our own home, and didn't have any experience in rental properties or investment properties. In fact, I bought Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's book, back in 2009, and didn't actually start reading it until 2014. So this whole concept about what is an asset, what is a liability, having known that from the finance industry, but didn't really apply it to my own sort of personal finances. So that was kind of a game changer. And then the big cull happened or right sizing, I think they call it, is a technical term. Went through that, and I was out on my bike. This was in May 2013, and I got a call from my wife, Monica, and she said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Well, technically yes, I'm on my bike." She said, "I just spent 17 grand on a property investment course," to which I almost fell off. Went back home, looked up this company that she'd just given £17,000 to, and saw scam, looking at people trying to get bad reviews and things like that. And I rang her back and said, "You've got to get that money back. You've got to get that money back." She said, "Too late, done." So she came back home. At the time, my final day at work was the day that the course was due to start. So she said, "Well, you're not doing anything now, so you can go off and learn about property investing." So I said, "Fine, okay." So I didn't actually turn up for my last day of work. Then I went into this 2 years worth of training with a company, and it taught me everything from looking at buy-to-lets, commercial conversions, but also other more obscure topics like how to protect your wealth, making sure that you've got the appropriate insurances, how to manage tenants, or as we call them in our business, customers. I think there's a very distinct difference between seeing someone as a tenant and seeing someone as a customer, and we've adopted that philosophy both in our own portfolio and in the portfolio that we manage for our clients. So it immersed me into that world, and didn't know where to go. So I was in this course of about 60 other people, so it was a popular thing to do back then, and everyone seemed to be going to places like Hull and Sunderland. So I dutifully went to Hull, bumped into about 4 different people that was on my course, and realised, Well, this is crazy. We're just going to be competing against each other. So started to look at other investment areas, and I ended up settling on Liverpool. 2008, it was the European City of Culture. It had about £2 billion worth of investment had gone into it. All the roads, all the areas that were not very nice were being sort of gentrified. A lot of investment going in. So I thought, well, that from my finance career, I thought, well, where the investment goes, energy flows, and opportunity is bound to be there. So we started buying 3-bed houses for about 50 grand. The mortgage rates were about, at that time, 4%, 4.9%. But because it was so low, it was like 60 quid, 70 quid on the mortgage. And at the time, the 3-bed rate was around about 450, 500 quid. So reasonable. We were clearing maybe £350 a month on a single let, which was great. But the first one went disastrously wrong. I blamed God personally because I was in a real bind with my first purchase. When you go through training, they set up these scenarios whereby you buy a house for £100,000, the refurbishment is £10,000. So I went out and bought this first house for £50,000, thought great, I've done well there. But the refurbishment came in at 20 grand. I thought, how can this be? It should be 10 grand. That's what I've been taught. This is what my mentor's been telling me. It's 10 grand, but this coming at 20 grand. So I didn't really know what to do. Got some quotes in from various building companies. They said, yep, definitely 20 grand all day long. And then I went down to the pub, sat next to this guy. He had long hair, sandals. He was a carpenter by trade. I thought, this is Jesus. This is my sort of coming home moment. I'm going to employ him. We struck up a relationship. He did the work. He ended up moving into the property. So I said, well, why are you moving into the property? He said, well, I've got lots of equipment here and it's not a very good area, let's face it. So I want to make sure that everything is secure. So I said, fine, but I've got to charge you rent. Yeah, I'll pay you rent. So I thought, great, I've got a tenant before I've actually finished which is another tick on the training thing. And then it just went completely downhill. So I had to evict him. So my first tenant on my first property, I had to evict. So I was going through all of these learnings, but I thought, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing because my mentor's saying, you've got to make all your mistakes early on. And here I am making all my mistakes on my first project. So it's a good thing. Monica was tearing her hair out. I've spent 17 grand. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. So calm down. It's about the long game. So, and then we started buying more. Went into another pub. There's lots of pubs up in Liverpool. Met another guy called Danny, who was a letting agent in Liverpool. And he said, what are you doing? I explained this, that, and the other. And he said, oh, have you heard about the 2+2 strategy? I said, no, what's the 2+2 strategy? So, well, if you've got a house and you've got 2 people on housing benefit, you can, and they've got access to 2 rooms, that's the 2 bit, then you can claim the 1-bed rate. So up in Liverpool, if you're housing benefit, you're probably getting around about 400 to 425 when the market price was around about 475, 500. But if you put in 2 individuals, you could get you could get the room rate, and the room rate was 350. So now you've got 2 people paying 350. That's 700. So £700 income on a 90 odd quid mortgage it was a no-brainer. So we converted some of the properties over to this 2+2 strategy. I said, well, why don't we put 4 people in? Then we can get 4. He said, no, you can't do that. That then becomes an HMO. I said, well, what's an HMO? He explained what an HMO is, and there's all sorts of other regulatory requirements that are involved, but nothing too onerous, nothing too impactful in terms of what we want to achieve. But the income went substantially up. So we bought this 3-story, they call them villas up there. They're not villas, they're terraced houses, but it makes good for the sales brochure. And we bought that for 110. We got 6 people in, and no en-suites. This wasn't the time where everyone wanted an ensuite. This wasn't a time where interior design was the most impactful thing, and the mustard yellow or the elephant hide grey was the in colour or whatever it was at that time. We just put 6 people in there, made sure it was all compliant, and we were sort of generating 1,200-1,300 quid a month income on it. So we thought, this is great, and we'll do more of these. But then the agent that was looking after them didn't do a very good job. So then we started to experience voids, never experienced voids before. We experienced high maintenance costs, never really experienced that before. And the margins started to come down. So that's when it became really important to choose the right agent, particularly if you've got HMOs, to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they are protecting your investment. After all, we're all investors. We work really hard to generate income, to buy assets. And if you give those assets to someone who doesn't look after them as if it was their own, then that hard work kind of goes a little bit to pot, in my humble opinion. So we started to do that. Then we realized that because I took redundancy and I left my job, the income bit was sorted. It's now looking at, well, what's the long-term plan? Because Liverpool wasn't really known for its capital growth. So we chose a second area, which is Camberley, which is where I grew up. And that became looking at properties for pension pots. We're very fortunate that we've got a number of final salary pensions, but you're reliant on the stock market. And I remember my dad, when he took retirement, waiting to be able to cash in his endowment policy when the stock market hit a certain level so he could clear off the mortgage. And I didn't really want to be in that position at all. I wanted to be sort of in control of my own fate. So the properties now form part of the pension. And the idea that, or the strategy that we adopted, was that once we had hit the income level that we needed from the cash flowing properties in Liverpool, anything that's excess, a bit like a waterfall, will go into another pot that starts to pay down debt on these other properties in Camberley, which will have a much more higher capital growth than in Liverpool. So the first one we bought at 237, that's now valued at 450, 460, so good capital growth. The Liverpool properties over the last 10 years have actually doubled in value, but they've gone from like 50 to 100, or from 100 to, well, not quite 200, about 170. So it was a good time to buy, made lots of mistakes. Jesus didn't help me, unfortunately, but it all came right in the end. And that's my potted history in terms of property.
That is a brilliant story. I love it.
Thank you. We've had lots of ups and we've had lots of downs, but you just have to keep going with property. The old adage that when's the best time to plant an apple tree was 20 years ago and today is absolutely true. We wish that we had bought more £50,000 houses back then, but something kind of held us back. You go into buying property. Most people, without really knowing what they're doing and not really understanding the legislative, easy for me to say, backdrop. I mean, if I tell you there's 173 laws and regulations that governs letting a house, to some people that's scary, and a lot of it sits in the background and you don't really know it. But that's why you need a good letting agent to take that risk on your behalf, or at least mitigate and manage some of that risk. But it's great. And once we'd set up the purchasing, going up and down to Liverpool just felt like another job, because my office was in Manchester when I was in corporate, had another office in Bristol. So I was commuting to these different locations, and going up to Liverpool just felt the same. Someone said, well, why don't we do something locally? Why don't we buy something locally? So we looked at Cambridge, far too expensive. Bedford, far too expensive. So then I went on a training course with a sage of a man, as far as I'm concerned, called Francis Dolly. If you're watching, Francis, thank you very much. And I come across something called rent to rent. Now, rent to rent's had a really bad press, but I prefer to think of it as becoming a letting agent, because that's essentially what it is. You're approaching people who own property, you're asking to control it or manage it on their behalf, and you're putting people in, you're collecting the rent and you're paying a fee. It's exactly what a letting agent does. So we started doing rent to rent in Bedford, got up to a decent sized portfolio. Then COVID hit. People didn't pay their rents, but with rent to rent, you've got fixed costs, because you're guaranteeing the rent to the landlord. That's the whole premise of rent to rent. And we started to see our margins decline. In fact, we were probably at the height of COVID losing about £4,000 a month. And we thought, well, we can't continue doing this. So we then pivoted the business into management. So now we do fee, but we do fee management a little bit different to what other letting agents might. So other letting agents will charge a percentage. We don't charge a percentage. We have a pay-as-you-go proposition. So if we do some work, we charge. If we don't do work, we don't charge. And what that means is that more income stays in landlords' pockets rather than going to the letting agent for not really doing anything. And just to preface that, I wanted to understand what a letting agent business really entailed. So I went to work with one of the countrywide subsidiaries, I won't say which one, in and around St Neots and Bedford, and realised that this was money for old rope. People were giving us properties, we were taking our fee, not really doing much for it. And whilst I probably will get lambasted by other agents out there, my personal philosophy is that agents are greedy and lazy. They will they will get their income in the quickest way and fastest way possible. And in an HMO world, and I know I'm being a bit controversial maybe, but I'll stick by it. In an HMO world, what that means is putting the first person that comes in to view the room into that property. Now, what's the knock-on effect of that? If you get a whole bunch of people who don't gel together, then you get a lot more management issues. Do the letting agents take that on board? No. They ring up the landlord and say, what do you want to do about it? So all those issues just gets played back to the landlord. So the landlord may as well manage it and save a few quid in the process. But the proposition that we have is that, well, we will take our time to find the right person. And what we typically find is that within 8 viewings, we will find at least 2 or 3 people that fit the criteria that we're looking for. And that stood us in good stead. So our overall occupancy is 98.9% occupancy for our customers.
Amazing.
But what that means for our HMO clients is that they don't have to get involved with, he stole my banana, she stole my Coca-Cola, where's my towel gone type of stuff, because we're adept to not having those types of people come in the property in the first place.
For people who want to get in contact with you, who might be watching, who are thinking, I like the sound of what Steve's just said, I would like you to manage my HMO, how do they get in contact with you?
They can contact us via our Facebook page. We don't have a website. It's almost a bit like you have to apply to become a client, and that might sound a little bit arrogant, but we want to work with landlords who take care of their property, who want to have good tenants and ergo a good income stream. We've had lots of landlords have approached us and we've gone to see the property and they're complete dives. And when we've said to them, well, will you change this? Will you refresh that? No, I won't do it. Well, we don't want to work with those types of people because I think we can't actually help them at the end of the day. And our philosophy is that if we can't save you 25% of your management fee, then we can't actually add any real value. So if we can save you 25%, and we've got a model that we go through with our clients, so we'll put all the relevant information in and it will show what you would have paid on that property had it been with us under management. And if it's 25% or greater, then we'd love to do business.
And the name of your company or Facebook group?
It's Vivoco, Vivoco. It's a little bit of an unusual name, but Vivo is Finnish for living together, and co as in company. So, and the reason it's Finnish is because I got married in Finland in the ice castle to my beautiful wife Monica.
Amazing. So maybe to wrap up, if you had one tip for anyone investing in property at the start, wanting to make all their mistakes and get them out of the way, or one tip for a person doing a rent to rent, whatever it might be, what are your thoughts?
I think my number one tip would be start with the end in mind. So why are you going into this? I see a lot of people from my mentoring that go into property just because they think it's the right thing to do, or they're looking for an alternative, when actually they're not really set up. I'll give you one example. I mentor a guy who's a music teacher. He wants to get into rent to rent. You can tell that he doesn't want to do it, but he can't see a different path for himself in order to get some additional income. So I just suggest to him, well, why don't you take your music knowledge and skills and create some videos and do an online how to learn a piano in 6 weeks, to which he did, and he's making more money from that than he would ever do from rent to rent. So sometimes it's not about advising people to go into property if their heart really isn't in it. It's about finding other ways of generating income, because that's all property is. It's getting the income. It doesn't matter how you get the income, it's just one route. And so therefore I would always say start with the end in mind. If you're buying a property, work out why you're buying it.
Thanks, Steve. Brilliant.
So if you check the description below, we'll put the link over to your Facebook page. I understand also there's a charity that you support.
Yes, so part of it is also giving back. For anyone who knows me, I'm a great cat lover. I've got 10 cats, four that we own and 6 that are on rescue. So the ones that are on rescue, 3 of them got cancer. One's had to have his tail amputated and he's got bone cancer, so he can only walk on 3 legs. Kitty's got skin cancer, so she's got a big growth and tumour under her tummy. And Duke, unfortunately, he's got also sort of a bone cancer. And what we do is we take part of the profits from our lettings business and we help support a local charity. The charity is called the Furry Friends. So if you are in a position to be able to donate, maybe even just £2 or £3 or £5 if you can, all of that money goes to paying off our vet's bills. And if I tell you our vet bills are about £3,000 a month, it all sort of adds up. So anything that you can provide or donate will be greatly received.
And we'll put that link below also. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you found Steve's past very insightful. And if you've got any questions or comments, please obviously pop them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe as usual, and we'll be doing a part 2 follow-up with Steve. So look out for that, and we'll see you on the next one.